Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. This time we are going to be talking about one of my new favorite games, Sea of Stars. Sea of Stars has a really good story. It is built on a few cliches that you'll find in a lot of other RPGs, but they're done very well here to the point where it doesn't feel old and tired or anything like that. There is sort of a narrator who's telling us the story, or at least is giving us some information that we wouldn't get in the game. Later on, this narrator is actually going to join your party, so that's pretty cool. This is kind of the classic, or at least it appears at the beginning, as the classic you have to defeat God story that you find in many RPGs, especially those that come out of Japan. This doesn't mean it's bad, it just means, well, it's a little bit cliche, and you should know kind of what you're getting into when you start up the game. There is a lot of secrecy early on, and there's a lot of secrecy that runs throughout this game. You aren't really told everything on your first playthrough. I'm assuming with multiple playthroughs, more of the story will unfold, because you can pick between one or two paths you want to follow, whether you want to have Zane as your main character or Valerie as your main character. So as one of either the two young Solstice warriors, you are getting a lot of hints that your mentor is hiding something. The two older Solstice warriors that are with you, I think they're trying to point you in the direction that they want you to go, but the mentor always steps in and stops them before they can finish their thoughts. The way it first started, it came across like you were being used as cannon fodder, or you were kind of going to be live bait for some big boss that they were trying to bring in. So the Solstice Warriors, they are fighting against the Dwellers, who serve the Fleshmancer. At the start of the game, your goal is to defeat the Dweller of Woe, who is, according to your mentor, the last known dweller in the world that you're on. This isn't true, but you don't find this out right away. Once you defeat it, the two older Solstice Warriors betray you and perform some kind of a ritual to resurrect the Dweller of Strife. This is the strongest of the Dwellers, apparently, and it managed to kill a bunch of Solstice Warriors when they went to try to defeat it. There are also 4 bad guys who are basically the acolytes of the Fleshmancer, and they're named 1, 2, 3, and 4. After the Dweller of Woe is defeated and the Dweller of Strife is resurrected, your mentor just kind of abandons his post and moves on with his life. He still tries to help in some ways, but he just doesn't want any part of this fight anymore. Yeah, it's a little weird. It does leave your party on their own to go and fight the Dwellers, and you find out more about what's going on. There's this character in the game called Sarai, who is also Kelishe. I think I pronounced that right, but if I didn't, please let me know in the comments. She's trying to hide her identity, but she's not doing a good job of it. It's, video game logic. Somebody walks off stage and removes their hat, then they're clearly a different person, but whatever. She is from a different planet, and the Fleshmancer has taken over that planet, and she's also a cyborg. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I should mention the side characters in this. I did talk about Sry, but you also have Garl, who really grew on me as the story went on, because at the beginning I was like, wow, this guy comes across like their annoying little brother who's just running around, but he's pretty fun, actually. He gets fatally wounded by the Fleshmancer when they're fighting the Dweller of Strife, and he has to... I should back up a little bit. Before that, you find the Dweller of Torment, and you defeat that one. That was kind of this hidden dweller that nobody knew about. That frees some other stuff, and Yeah, it's kind of weird. You're just sort of skipping around because you're trying to unlock a way to get at the Dweller of Strife to stop it. And yeah, this is where the story gets a little bit complicated. You defeat the Dweller of Torment, you gather all the items that you need in order to gain access to the Dweller of Strife, who is hidden in this clockwork castle. So once you fight the Dweller of Strife, you find out you're not strong enough to defeat it, and this is when you have, like, the narrator I mentioned at the beginning. He joins your party, but he says he can't fight the Dwellers because he has some agreement with the Fleshmancer. And you find out that they used to be friends, but once the narrator at the beginning, he's called the Immortal Alchemist, he kind of finds out how terrible the Fleshmancer is, and they kind of part ways. That story isn't really as fleshed out as well as I would have liked, but maybe they're saving that for something else. I don't know. Let me get back to the main story here. So, you aren't able to beat the Dweller of Strife. The Immortal Alchemist gets tricked, or kind of accidentally hits the Dweller, which triggers the Fleshmancer to show up. They have a little bit of a dialogue, and then the Fleshmancer mortally wounds Garl. And you also find out more about why the two older Solstice warriors wanted to betray them, or betray, like, the Order and then leave. You have Erlina, who wants to protect Bugraves, or Burgraves. I don't know how to pronounce his name, and I'm very sorry. But they want to just not be Solstice warriors anymore. So the Fleshmancer kind of makes a deal with them and everything, and they exit stage right along with all the Acolytes and the Dweller of Strife. This is where things get even more complicated. So Garl's fatally wounded. He's given a potion called Borrowed Time, so he can temporarily do what he needs to do. And that is access the Sea of Stars, so that your party can go to Sarai's planet and ultimately defeat the Fleshmancer. It's a pretty cool thing at this point. I was really liking what's happening. It was getting a bit confusing, but a lot of what was going on in the story was reminding me of different games like Chrono Trigger or Phantasy Star 4 and stuff like that. It was pretty fun. So you end up going to Sarai's world, and you need to kind of restore balance to that world so that you can actually defeat the Fleshmancer. And you have a bunch of quests you need to complete along the way. You need to defeat the Dweller of Dread. So there's another Dweller, which I think they're kind of cool. They look like Lovecraftian horrors, which I really dig. And once you defeat the Dweller of Dread, this puts the moon back into the right place because it was sunk into the ocean. You also need to go onto a space station and stop that from basically pumping clouds out into the atmosphere so that the sun can shine through. And then you also meet a character which is just, I don't even know how to, Bist? B''st. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that. I was just kind of guessing. But he reminded me of the little plant creature that you meet in Breath of Fire 3, so that was kind of fun. Then you go on to just the final battle. And this is where I'll talk more about the end later, but I really liked the final battle, but it really wasn't exactly what I was expecting. And I wasn't totally sure how to feel about the ending, but I'll talk about that closer to the end of this whole review. Sea of Stars is a turn-based RPG, and I like most of the gameplay in this. Some of it is not really what I like in an RPG, mostly with the combat system. And it's only a small part of the combat system that I don't like. But aside from that, the game's got a lot of really fun ideas. The gameplay is it's pretty good. And yeah, it's a lot of fun to play. So there are 6 playable characters in this. You have Zale and Valerie, they're your 2 main characters. Then you have Garl, he's kind of their lovable friend, and a warrior cook, so he's kind of cool. You have Sarai, who's an assassin, a cyborg assassin, very important to mention that. And then you have Roshan, who is the immortal alchemist and the archivist from the very beginning. Got a whole bunch of names and everything, but Roshan is the one that really should have been the one I used the entire time. And then you have Bist. I think again, no idea how to pronounce that. Garl unfortunately passes away, so you just have 5. But what's really cool, during the battle you can swap in between these characters without losing a turn. So, backing up a little bit, when you're in the combat section, some of the enemies will have like a timer and then a list of attacks you need to use in order to disrupt their attack. So if you have an enemy like a big boss that's building up for this massive spell, you can interrupt that spell, which makes the end boss much easier, but whatever. So if you need to hit it twice with like a sword, or you need to hit it with a sun spell and then 2 mace hits or something like that, you can do that, and you can always swap your characters around to get the right attacks in place in order to like disrupt the enemy's turn. So that's kind of cool. That's something I really liked. The part of the combat that I did not like very much, because I just don't like this style of combat in a turn-based RPG, is the timing attack and defense. So when you attack, if you press the A button again, or whatever action button you're using for this, and if you time it right, you will get 2 attacks off. And when you're being attacked, if you press it right, you can reduce the amount of damage that's coming in. I don't like this because I feel like you should just have that damage already, or you should just take that amount of damage already. It's adding in something that I don't think is really necessary. The game tells you you don't need to do this, but you're incentivized to do it. So, yeah. You can also pick up these things called relics, which will do it automatically, but it does it automatically at a reduced amount of damage that you can do, and a reduced amount of damage that will be reduced. It's just something I don't really like that much. You have both spells and combo attacks in this, so it feels a little bit like Chrono Trigger's tech abilities and everything, where you can have two characters do an attack at the same time, or you'll have like special attacks that will require certain numbers of combo points. As you attack in this game, your combo meter will build up, so you can have up to 3 combo points, and those kind of control your combo attacks that you can do. If you do a combo attack with one character, the other characters that participated in that attack still have a turn that they can do. So that's kind of cool that they did it that way. The magic attacks are pretty awesome, and you can also enhance your attacks with magical powers as well. So doing a regular attack will drop a bunch of little, think of them like mana balls on the ground. And when you go to attack, you just hold down one of the trigger buttons, and you can absorb 1 to 3 of these different kind of supercharges for your character, and that'll increase your attacks, or it'll add some magical powers to it. It's pretty cool that they did it this way, and it's another thing that I like. You don't have to use it, but it would be kind of dumb if you didn't use it. Like many RPGs, there are a lot of little puzzles that you need to do in order to unlock doors or gain access to a certain part of the map so you can keep going in the story. And these are pretty cool. Like, you need to get a grappling hook so that you can jump over certain areas or pull out certain switches in order to give yourself a chance to kind of gain access to certain parts of the game. You also get like a little wind bracelet so you can move objects around, like different pillars or balls or anything else, really. This is one of those things where I get what they're doing to add a little bit more to the game, to make you think about certain things and kind of break it up so you're not just having a linear path of running through it. You still have some obstacles you need to get through. But yeah, it's one of those things that you either appreciate it or you're kind of like, I don't know why this is here. Overall, I really like the gameplay. I think it's pretty good. There are some things that I don't like about it, but those things are pretty minor. The graphics in Sea of Stars are gorgeous. It looks a little bit like a game from like the late 90s and the early 2000s when they were trying to get more like anime cutscenes into games. It looks just really, really good. Both worlds are awesome. They look so cool. You can tell there's like a lot of bright and hopeful stuff going on in the first world, and the second world looks really just kind of depressing, like they're on their last legs already, or they don't have any hope, or they've given up hope, or something like that. I just really love how this game looks. At times, it looks kind of like a watercolor painting. It's just such a beautiful game to look at, and I think the closest games I can think of are like the Secret of Mana games, how those look just absolutely stunning back in the day, especially Legend of Mana on the PS1. Near the end of the game, when you lose Garl as a party member, you get this really awesome cutscene that doesn't look like any of the other cutscenes in the game. It reminds me an awful lot of Phantasy Star 4, all of the cutscenes in that game, where they're done with like comic book panels and everything. It looks so cool. It looked really cool back when Phantasy Star 4 did it, and seeing it here, it's really great, and I think it adds a lot to just the emotions of that scene, where you just kind of get still images of how everybody's dealing with everything. And yeah, it looks really good. The other cutscenes are excellent. I really love just how they look, how they're used in this. It looks really cool. Overall, I love the graphics. The characters are really awesome looking. The enemies are like really unique and cool looking. The locations are great. It looks like these worlds have been around for a very long time. There's a lot of history that you just haven't quite been able to explore yet because it maybe doesn't tie into what's going on in the game, but it still looks really cool. What else? Oh, the bosses are awesome. Once you get to the end of the game where everything gets more Lovecraftian, then it looks really great. And you can just see how creepy and weird everything is. It's so cool. All the dwellers look really good, like they're just these abominations that have been created by the Fleshmancer and they're being sent after you. Everything just looks really awesome. I just love the graphics. Sea of Stars really reminds me of just a bunch of other RPGs, and the graphics are a big part of that, as well as the cutscenes, especially that comic book cutscene. I really love that one. So now we come to the ending. Let me tell you what I thought was going to happen, and then we'll go over what actually does happen. I thought you were going to fight 4 bosses at the end of this. I thought you were going to either fight the 4 acolytes and the Dweller of Strife and whatever they turned into, which I think you do, but it's not in the way that I thought you were going to. And then I thought you were going to fight Burgraves at the end, which you might be able to, but I either missed that part or something happened where I didn't recognize that he showed up. And then I figured you would fight Elena, and then after you defeat her, you would fight the Fleshmancer. What actually happened was it's mentioned that Burgraves is turned into something, but it's kind of a throwaway line, and I think I missed seeing him at the end. You then fight Elena, and she's been turned into something by the Fleshmancer, and she doesn't seem to recognize you anymore. and she has two forms once you get past those. Then the Fleshmancer shows up, but you never actually fight him. There's a little bit of dialogue between him and Roshan, and then you go off to fight this World Eater. Sorry, which I think is a combination of the Dweller of Strife and the four Acolytes. But that's in like a vertical scrolling shooter, which I was not expecting at all from that. It's a somewhat satisfying ending, but you don't get what I thought you were going to get, and it doesn't feel as good as it could, if that makes any sense. I was hoping that you would fight the Fleshmancer, but you don't really do that. You just kind of get told that he's too strong for you, and then Roshan and the Fleshmancer go off to wherever. And then Zane and Valerie turn into their balls of light and go and do a vertical scrolling shooter for a while. So it turns into like a version of R-Type for a little bit at the end, which is fine, but it was kind of like, why is this here? And then you beat the World Eater and the credits roll, and you get a few scenes of what happened in the credits and everything. But it just kind of felt a little flat and maybe not as satisfying as I wanted. But I was probably hoping for something completely different, and when I got something good, I probably just overanalyzed it, which happens from time to time. So I think it's an interesting ending, and it does end with you beating up the person who betrayed you at the very beginning, but it's kind of a weird ending where evil and good are still out there, and you have to kind of deal with those in maybe another Sea of Stars, but hey, you never know. So you've saved two worlds, you beat the person that betrayed you, and kind of then what? Maybe there was something more at the end of the credits that I didn't stick around for, but yeah, it was, I don't really know how to feel about the ending. I liked most of it, but yeah, it kind of felt strange at the end. Yeah, anyway, let's wrap this up and you guys can move on with your day. Sea of Stars has gorgeous graphics, good gameplay, and a great story. There are a few minor things that I don't like, and some of those minor things kind of grew on me as the game progressed. I'm not a fan of the timing combat system, but it's one of those things that it does work pretty well in the game, even if it's not something that I really prefer. It's probably the best game that I've played this year. I like it a little bit more than Dredge and Oxenfree 2, and I think this is just a beautiful looking game with a great story. The ending is, it was a little bit of a letdown for me, but it was still a good ending for what was set up throughout the entire story. I don't think any of the things that I brought up, any of the negative things that I brought up, should really detract anyone from playing this game. It is a wonderful experience. It reminded me a lot of the RPGs I enjoyed from the 90s and into the early 2000s. It feels like there's a little Chrono Trigger, a little Phantasy Star, and a little bit of Super Mario RPG in this game. I kept finding things in this that reminded me of other games that I enjoyed playing, and I wished that this game had actually gone on longer. I wanted to see what other adventures our heroes were going to go on, like what was going to happen after they kind of foiled the Fleshmancer's plans here. And he's still out there, so they could potentially go on and find other worlds that need to be saved. You never know. Overall, I think it's a pretty good game. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's been probably one of the better games that I played this year. I'm not totally sure where it's going to fall at the end of the year, but we'll see once we get to that once we get into December and I need to figure out what my game of the year was. But this is a pretty strong contender for it. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.